Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be taking a look at some of the internationals that could come over for a Melbourne Cup tilt, as well as looking at an equation we can use to predict this year's Melbourne Cup winner. That's coming at the end of the video. Let's start with the internationals and take a quick look at the market. Riffa and Sir Delius are the favourites currently, $6 each. Revelare, the clear third favourite at $11. Buckaroo, Changing of the Guard, Land Legend and Middle Earth, all currently at $15. Scandinavia got taken out earlier this week. Let's take a look at the favourite Riffa as our first international. I will give a heads up in this video. I'm not going to show any replays just because in the past I've been pulled up for some issues copyright wise, so I'm not going to take the risk again in this video. Riffa, very dominant last start win in the Irish St Leger. It's been a good form reference, the Irish St Leger, in recent years. In 2020, Twilight Payment won. 2019, Master of Reality and Cross Counter ran well. Red Cadeau got beaten in a photo in 2011 coming out of an Irish St Leger. Riffa won the Irish St Leger by 4 lengths. It was a dominant display, one of the best internationals we could see come across to the Melbourne Cup in some time. The big query, and I say big because it's my opinion, big query is the weight, 59 kilos. I'm going to pop up some stats that I posted on my Discord a couple of weeks ago. Link in the description to join up the Discord if you haven't already. But pretty much there's been, over the past 15 years, these horses are imports and carried over 56.5 kilos in the Cup. And Red Cadeau runs second. That was in 2014 when it lost by 4 lengths. Spanish Mission ran third. It also lost by over 4 lengths. No one's really gotten within 4 lengths with over 56.5 kilos. And Riffa has to carry the 59. If it was on last year's weight scale, it's probably around the 58, which is still a lot. But I think Riffa can still win because it seems like it's a really good horse. 4-length win in the Irish St Leger. It could defy history by becoming one of the first imports, first import in a long time to win with over 56.5 kilos. Let me know what you think of Riffa below. I think the weight's a query, but class could shine through. The next international I'm going to be taking a look at is Parchment Party. 5-year-old, 11 starts is usually pretty good for a Melbourne Cup in the right stage of its career. It's won its last 2 races. It's shown its liking to both firm and wet tracks. The Belmont Gold Cup 2 starts ago, I'm pretty sure it was the race that got the golden ticket into the Melbourne Cup, winning by almost 9 lengths there. I'm not sure how good the Birdstone Stakes is as a form reference because I don't think an American horse has come over for some time or even any time at all for a Melbourne Cup, bringing American form. So I'm not sure how to treat Parchment Party. It's a bit of a weird one. I don't know whether it's coming over at all, but if it does, I've got to look at it a bit more closely. Next international is called Pras Nocturn. This horse is a 6-year-old with 16 starts. So again, it's in the right sort of stage of its career. It ran last start in the Pre-Kergolais. I hope I've pronounced that all right. It almost won that. In terms of the Pre-Kergolais as a form reference, Mello in 2018, who ran second to Cross Counter, came out of the Pre-Kergolais and I think finished maybe a length off the winner. So the form can stack up for a Melbourne Cup. Pras Nocturn, it's in the right stage of its career. It could run well if it comes over. This is the international that I hope Andrew Balding brings over, because if you like your past history, you're really going to like this Ruffy international at $41. Its name is Further. A Northern Hemisphere 3-year-old, only had the 8 career starts, ran behind Scandinavia in the English St Leger. Now, if you love your history, as I said before, you're going to love these 2 stats, or these 2 horses that have run in the Cup in past years. So in 2019, El Paradiso started double figures in the English St Leger, finished about 5 lengths off the winner, and arguably should have won that Melbourne Cup in 2019. In 2017, Rekindling, who won the Melbourne Cup, started double figures in the English St Leger and ran, I think, 3 lengths off the winner. This year, Further started double figures in the English St Leger and finished 4.5 lengths off Scandinavia. So if you love your history, I think those things aligning in terms of starting price and margin off the winner at $41 Further is worth a ticket, but I'd be holding off until it's confirmed that Further is coming over here. to run in the Melbourne Cup, because I still don't know that yet. He's run in the Cup the past 2 years in a row, absurd, and he might be back for another tilt. He's now an 8-year-old. He's had 27 career starts for Willie Mullins. He last ran at the Curragh in the Irish St Ledger trial, and disappointed market expectation. Little question mark as to whether he is going as well this year as he has been the past couple of years. He's now an 8-year-old, so maybe he might be starting to fall over the edge a bit, absurd, but nonetheless he's been competitive the past 2 years, and if he brings his best he could run well again. The next one is Flatten the Curve, $51 I'm pretty sure he is at the moment, with the 41 career starts as a 7-year-old. I think he's drifted in the market a bit since the market has opened for the Melbourne Cup. He was smashed by Parchment Party 3 runs ago, so I'd be happy to look past Flatten the Curve. The next international is Hip Hop de Loire. It's a 9-year-old. 2 starts ago it ran in the Ebor behind Ethical Diamond. I would have liked to seen it finish a little bit closer to the winner to be a live Melbourne Cup chance. Lastly, we're going to take a look at the Japanese Golden Snap. It's had the 16 career starts. It ran in the Daishoten 2 starts ago. The same race as what Warp Speed ran in before he came over to the Melbourne Cup. Warp Speed finished about 5 lengths off the winner. Golden Snap about 10 lengths off the winner, so he's got a bit to make up there on Warp Speed. Overall, out of all of that, I have no idea who's coming over for the Melbourne Cup yet out of those internationals. Riffa's all the rage, but I think the weight is a massive concern. And at $41, I hope they bring further over, because I like my history and it aligned with Rekindling and Il Paradiso's runs in the English St Ledger as a last start form reference further for Andrew Balding, so I'm hoping he brings it over. Now, as I said at the start of the video, an equation to figure out the winner of this year's Cup. I'm going to pop up a graph, I should say, on the screen. And there's little X marks on there, and you'll see a red line which best fits these X spots. So what are these X spots? If you look at the X and Y axis, what is POT score and what is bullet score? So if I take you back to 3 weeks ago where I put out the Melbourne Cup video looking at different form factors, the points to runs ratio and also the little bullet score, or the profit on turnover score to the far right of the screen, is what contributes to these Y and X axis little X marks. So for all the form factors, for all the past 15 winners of the Melbourne Cup, I have added up the points to runs ratio scores across all form factors for the winner and divided it by the number of the form factors to get our X. And then for the profit on turnover scores, I've done the exact same thing, divided it by the number of profit on turnover scores and got the Y, and we're able to plot the points on the graph. So now that you know how these dot points were plotted, you're probably wondering who are those specific X marks, because I couldn't label them at all. So we'll start with left to right above the red line. Right to the left of screen, we have Knight's Choice. So we're going left to right, and those horses above the red line. Knight's Choice, Twilight Payment, Gold Trip, Protectionist, Very Elegant, Green Moon, Fiorente, Rekindling. Now those horses left to right that are below the red line: Prince of Penzance, Vow and Declare, Without a Fight, Al Mandan, Duna Den, Americane, and Cross Counter. So I've mapped out a window where 12 out of the 15 Melbourne Cup winners have been heading into the Melbourne Cup. So 80% of the Melbourne Cup winners over the last 15 years have been in this window. It's a very creative name that I thought of, the window. And we're going to be looking at, from the variables that we know so far for this year's Melbourne Cup, we're going to be looking at horses that are in this window. I should also point out that the line of the graph equates to Y equals negative 2.05 plus 0.18x. So we're going to use this equation to work out some residuals. I've tested this for the past 5 Melbourne Cups. It does take a while, so I've only done the last 5 Melbourne Cups, but I'm going to bring up a page now in my workbook and I'll explain it a bit. So for example, this is a 2024 map of the Melbourne Cup field. So we've got 4 categories here: bullet scores, POT scores, residuals, and window question mark. So the bullet and profit on turnover scores are the top 10, and it's from highest to lowest. Residual scores are the ones closest to zero to the ones furthest away from zero, but we've only got the top 10 that are closest to zero. And then window question mark is in saddlecloth order of those horses. I think actually for 2024, those aren't in saddlecloth order exactly, but for the other 3 or 4 years that we're going to look at soon enough, they're in saddlecloth order. So Knight's Choice is nowhere to be seen. Akita Sushi ran third, a good race. From the bullet score to the window, it went up slightly in positions. Warp Speed was actually the second highest, or closest to zero, I should say, in terms of a residual score, fitting that those 2 bullet and profit on turnover scores to the equation. Now we'll move on to 2023. There's a little bit more red riding here, which is good. But Without a Fight, the winner goes up from the bullet scores to the window. You can see that straight line there. Solcombe does the same thing, who was very close and would have tested Without a Fight that year if Jal Moreira had have given it a better steer. Now we'll move on to 2022. Gold Trip features in every single category, and it goes up from the bullet scores to the window question mark. Then in 2021, Very Elegant goes up from the bullet scores into the window question mark in terms of position in the book. And then in 2020, Twilight Payment was actually the closest to zero in the residuals, and it's gone up from the bullet scores to the window, a straight line there. So what are we looking for this year in terms of that? Well, I'm going to look for a horse that is in the top 10 bullet scores, in the window, and goes up in the book. So more specifically, looking for a horse that is A, in the top 10 bullet scores and in the window. And if that's the case, then they have to be in the top 3 in either the residuals or the window saddlecloth numbers. So here is the 2025 of the variables we know. This is nowhere near the final result because we don't know over half of the variables that I've been testing. But the horses that are in the top 10 bullet scores at the moment and the window is Riffa, also Middle Earth, Land Legend, Deacon, and Parchment Party. So there are 5 horses that are currently, and I've only tested the top 20 in the market. So we're not looking at the whole field yet. These are just the top 20 in the market plus a few extra internationals I threw in. So out of those 5, who is in the top 3 for residuals and or the window? Well, we have Riffa, who's first in the window currently, being the top saddlecloth, and Land Legend, who is second in the residuals. We've also got Middle Earth, who's 4th in the residuals and goes upwards from bullet scores to the windows. So I'm going to count Middle Earth in there as well. So we're going to revisit this workbook page on the Saturday night when the Melbourne Cup final field is released with all the variables that we know, so we can get an accurate representation of who to back in the 2025 Melbourne Cup. I don't feel like I explained that quite well. If you're sitting there thinking, what did the Saminator just say? Well, I don't think you're the only one. But at the end of it all, the horses that I'm looking at the moment is Riffa, Middle Earth, and Land Legend, who fit that criteria of the winners of the past 5 Melbourne Cups we took a look at from my workbook. Riffa, I'm a bit worried about the weight, so I might replace Riffa with Further, who wasn't in the window, but I just like its history of the rekindling in Il Paradiso, English St. Ledger, little 2 factors there. So at the moment, Further, I think if it comes over, it's a live chance. Middle Earth is working up to hopefully a Melbourne Cup, and Land Legend, it just needs to settle. And we'll get a better gauge of that over its next couple of runs. But it'll be the 3 I'm looking at currently. Thanks everyone for watching. You might need to watch this over again to figure out what I'm talking about. And until next video, bye for now.